At 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, single mom Kayla Morgan answered a call that wasn't meant for her and heard a stranger's voice ask the one question that would shatter her world. Is this baby really yours? 27-year-old Kayla had been surviving on 3 hours of sleep and pure determination since Noah was born 8 months ago. Tonight felt no different. Her cramped Dallas studio apartment smelled like leftover takeout and baby formula. The kind of tired that settles in your bones had become her permanent companion. She just finished her double shift at Mel's Diner on Commerce Street, where coffee-stained uniforms and aching feet were the price of keeping lights on. After that, she'd rush to her night cleaning job at the downtown office building. 12 hours of work for barely enough money to cover rent and diapers. Noah finally slept in his second-hand crib, his tiny chest rising and falling with the rhythm that had become her lullaby. The phone's blue glow cut through the darkness, casting shadows across his peaceful face. Outside, Dallas traffic hummed like background music she'd learned to ignore. Unknown number. Block caller ID. Her finger hovered over decline. Nothing good happened after midnight calls from strangers. But desperation made her curious. Maybe someone needed the diner's hours, or her cleaning supervisor had forgotten to mention weekend work. Hello. Silence stretched like a held breath. Then a voice. Deep. Male. Commanding in a way that made her spine straighten. Is this baby really yours? Ice water flooded her veins. The words hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. Excuse me. The baby. Noah Daniel Morgan. Born March 15th at Dallas Presbyterian. Room 314. Is he really yours? Her hand trembled against the phone. Room 314. How could a stranger know that? The hospital bracelet still sat in her jewelry box, the only memento from the scariest, most beautiful day of her life. Who is this? Someone who has questions about your son's birth certificate. Birth certificate. Her breath caught. Last month, she needed Noah's documents for daycare enrollment. The county clerk had acted strange, shuffling papers, making phone calls. Said there was a processing delay she'd never heard of before. What kind of questions? The kind that require meeting face to face. Her eyes flew to Noah's crib. Still sleeping. Still safe. Still hers. Listen, whoever you are. Logan Pierce. And before you hang up, ask yourself this. Why would someone you've never met know your hospital room number, your son's middle name, and the exact time he was born? Logan Pierce. The name sounded familiar, like something from news headlines she couldn't quite remember. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you. About what? About the people who sold private medical information for cash. About hospital records that don't add up. About the fact that someone in Nashville has been asking very specific questions about your pregnancy. Nashville. Her blood turned to concrete. Melody. Her former best friend who'd moved there right after Noah's birth. Melody, who'd been so helpful during her pregnancy. Too helpful. What do you want? To show you what I've learned. And to figure out why someone would go through this much trouble to track down you and your son. The line went quiet except for the sound of her heart hammering against her ribs. Through the window, Dallas sparkled like scattered diamonds, beautiful and dangerous. Have you ever received a call that made your blood run cold? When a stranger knows things about you they shouldn't. Tell me in the comments what you would do. I don't have money for lawyers or private investigators or whatever game this is. This isn't about money. Then what? It's about the truth. And the truth is, someone's been watching you since before Noah was born. Before she could demand answers, the line went dead. But the damage was done. Someone out there knew about Noah, knew details only she and the hospital should have. And they had her number. Logan Pierce built his empire on information, but the data on his desk about a Dallas waitress and her baby was the one puzzle that kept him awake for 72 hours straight. 34 years old and worth more than some small countries. Logan had learned to trust facts over feelings. Facts didn't lie. People did. Numbers told stories that hearts try to hide. His Seattle penthouse stretched across the 42nd floor, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the city like a digital painting he'd grown tired of viewing. Tonight, his attention fixed on the manila folder before him. A single mother's entire life reduced to surveillance photos and credit reports. Kayla Morgan, born in Oklahoma City to parents who divorced when she was 12. Moved to Dallas at 23 with dreams bigger than her bank account. Worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3. Never married. No criminal record. No college degree. No social media presence worth mentioning. The kind of person his world never intersected with. Until now, the private investigators' report painted a picture of survival. Every receipt, every paycheck, every apartment lease told the same story. A woman fighting to build something from nothing. Her son's father wasn't listed on any documents. Medical records showed she'd handled pregnancy alone. But medical records also showed something else. Something that made Logan's chest tighten with familiar rage. His own son's face stared back from a different folder. Ethan, 3 years old now, living in his ex-wife's Malibu mansion. A boy Logan wasn't allowed to see, speak to, or acknowledge. The custody battle had been vicious and public. Victoria had painted him as a workaholic who chose money over family. She hadn't been wrong. Back then, the difference was Logan's loss had been legal. Expensive lawyers and expensive suits had decided his ex-wife deserved full custody because billionaires apparently couldn't learn to be fathers. The system had taken his son through courtrooms and paperwork. Someone had taken Kayla's through deception. His investigator's voice played in his memory. The hospital records don't match up. Someone altered documents after the birth. Professional job, but sloppy enough to leave digital fingerprints. Digital fingerprints that led to a network Logan's money could trace. Fake medical records, forged documents, paid off officials. The kind of corruption that treated children like commodities and mothers like livestock. What would drive a billionaire to investigate a stranger's child? Drop your theories in the comments below. Logan had started searching for corruption in adoption systems after losing Ethan. If he couldn't have his own son, maybe he could help other parents keep theirs. The investigation had become his obsession, his penance, his way of fighting a system that measured parental worth in dollars instead of love. But Kayla's case was different. Personal, because the DNA results sitting in his safe weren't about adoption fraud. They were about family. Rain began pattering against the windows as Logan reviewed the timeline. Kayla's pregnancy, her friend Melody's sudden helpfulness, the mysterious move to Nashville right after Noah's birth, the hospital worker who'd been fired for policy violations the same week. Every piece fit together like a machine designed to separate mothers from children. But this machine had made a mistake. It had left evidence, and evidence was something Logan knew how to use. He picked up his phone and scrolled to recent calls. Her number was there, added to his contacts as simply Kayla, no last name needed. After tonight's conversation, they were connected whether she wanted it or not. The truth was, he hadn't planned to call her tonight. He'd planned to gather more evidence first, build a stronger case. But watching her apartment building through his investigator's telephoto lens had changed something in his chest. She'd walk home from work at nearly midnight, shoulders squared against exhaustion, climbing 3 flights of stairs to a baby who needed her. She reminded him of his own mother. Before the money, before the empire, when love was measured in sacrifices instead of stock portfolios. The DNA results arrived as he watched Kayla's apartment building through his investigator's telephoto lens. The match was 99.7% certain, but not in the way anyone expected. Some conversations can't happen over the phone, especially when they involve accusations that could destroy a mother's world or heal a billionaire's broken heart. Logan's private jet cut through Texas sky like a silver needle threading clouds. Below, Dallas sprawled in geometric patterns of lights and highways. He made this trip on 12 hours' notice, canceling board meetings and rearranging his life around a woman who didn't trust him and a truth that might break them both. Kayla had agreed to meet. Barely. After 3 more phone calls where she demanded explanations he couldn't give over an unsecured line. After he'd promised to bring documents, not demands. After she'd made it clear this meeting was her choice, not his manipulation. Smart woman. Careful woman. The kind of mother who protected what mattered. Meanwhile, in her cramped apartment, Kayla counted tip money for the 3rd time. Each crumpled bill represented hours of serving coffee to people who never saw her face, never learned her name, never wondered if the woman pouring their refills had dreams beyond their next cup. $43.67. Enough for gas to the meeting location. Enough for a taxi home if things went wrong. Not enough for a lawyer if this man turned out to be dangerous. She'd researched Logan Pierce online. Tech billionaire. Started his first company at 19. Sold it for enough money to buy small countries. Reclusive after a public divorce 3 years ago. No criminal record. No scandal beyond wealth and stubbornness. The photo showed a man with serious eyes and expensive suits. Someone who'd never pumped gas with quarters or chosen between groceries and electricity bills. Someone whose problems came with solutions that money could buy. Noah stirred in his crib as she prepared to leave. 8 months old and already her whole world. The thought of meeting a stranger who claimed to know secrets about her son's birth made her stomach twist like rope. But the alternative was worse. Living with questions, wondering who was watching, waiting for another midnight call with information she couldn't ignore. The 24-hour truck stop diner near Dallas-Fort Worth Airport hummed with fluorescent lights and tired travelers. Kayla chose it because it was public, neutral, full of witnesses. Logan had agreed without argument, which either meant he was respectful or smart enough to let her feel safe. She arrived first. Always arrive first. Control what you can't control. The diner smelled like coffee and grease. Dreams and desperation mixed together in equal measure. Truckers hunched over pie and complaints about delivery schedules. Airport workers grabbed quick meals between shifts. Night people living in the spaces between other people's days. Logan Pierce walked through the glass doors at exactly 2 a.m., and the diner's fluorescent lights seemed dimmer in comparison. Expensive suit tailored to fit shoulders that suggested he'd learned about work before he'd learned about wealth. Dark hair with gray threads that came from stress, not age. Eyes that saw everything and revealed nothing. He was taller than expected. More human than his photos suggested. Less arrogant than his bank account should have allowed. Kayla Morgan? She nodded from her corner booth, coffee growing cold between her hands. Mr. Pierce. He slid across from her with careful and deliberately, like a man who'd learned that sudden gestures made people nervous. The vinyl seat creaked under his weight. Thank you for meeting me. Thank you for not making me wonder forever. The diner's neon, open 24-hour sign flickered against the night sky, casting pink shadows across their faces as two strangers shared secrets that could rewrite both their stories. You said someone's been watching me since before Noah was born. I need to know what that means. Logan opened a leather portfolio. Documents slid across the sticky table like evidence in a trial neither of them had chosen to join. Hospital records, birth certificates, insurance forms, all showing irregularities that wouldn't mean anything to most people. But they mean something to you. They mean someone altered official documents after your son's birth. Someone with access to medical databases and state record systems. Someone who knew exactly what to change and how to change it. Her eyes scanned the papers. Forms she'd never seen before. Signatures that looked like hers but felt wrong. Dates that didn't match her memory. Why would someone do that? Because certain types of adoptions require clean paperwork. No questions. No complications. No birth mothers who might change their minds. When someone challenges what you believe about your own life, how do you know what's real? Comment below with your thoughts. The coffee in her cup had gone cold, but her blood was burning. Are you saying someone tried to sell my baby? I'm saying someone succeeded in selling babies. Just not yours. Logan pulled out a photograph. Noah's face, but in the arms of a woman Kayla had never seen. The hospital bracelet was identical. The timestamp showed the same day Noah was born. This, Logan said quietly, is why I called. The richest man in tech and a broke single mom sat across from each other in a fluorescent-lit diner booth, about to discover that some truths are worth more than any fortune. Kayla's hand shook as she studied the photograph. Noah's face. Noah's exact face. But wrong arms, wrong woman, wrong everything. That's not me. I know. But that's my baby. Logan's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. That's what I'm trying to figure out. The truck stop diner suddenly felt smaller, the walls pressing closer. Truckers and night shift workers continued their conversations, unaware that a single mother's world was fracturing apart at table 12. Who is she? Kayla pointed at the woman in the photo. Someone who paid a lot of money for a healthy infant. Someone whose lawyers filed adoption papers 3 days after this photo was taken. Adoption papers for my son? For a son. The question is which one? The words hit like ice water. Which one? As if there were options. As if Noah wasn't singular, irreplaceable, hers. Logan spread more documents across the table. Medical records, financial transfers, correspondence between law firms. The paper trail of a business transaction dressed up as family building. The woman in the photo received a baby through what she believed was a legal private adoption. Paid over $200,000. All paperwork appeared legitimate. Someone very good at document forgery made sure everything looked clean. Birth mother consent forms. Medical histories. Legal surrenders. None of it real. Kayla's stomach churned. You're saying someone stole babies and sold them to people who thought they were adopting legally? I'm saying someone built a business around separating children from mothers who couldn't fight back. Single moms. Poor families. Women without resources or connections. The description hit too close to home. Women like her. Women who worked multiple jobs and lived paycheck to paycheck. Women whose desperation made them invisible to systems designed to protect people with power. But I have Noah. He's home with my neighbor right now. So this photo. Logan met her eyes directly. This photo was taken the same day Noah was born. Same hospital. Same timestamp. Same medical bracelet. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like countdown timers. Everything felt surreal, like a movie where she was watching someone else's life fall apart in real time. That's impossible. Toi rente impossible. The word landed like a physical blow. Twins. 2 babies. 2 sons. 2 pieces of her heart she'd never known existed. I didn't have twins. According to these medical records, you did. 2 healthy boys, born 17 minutes apart. Both listed under your name and social security number. Logan slid another document toward her. A hospital delivery report she'd never seen. Her name at the top. Her signature at the bottom, though she didn't remember signing it. And in the middle, clinical language that rewrote her entire understanding of motherhood. Patient delivered twin males at 3:47 a.m. and 4:04 a.m. respectively. Both infants healthy. Both discharged with mother. But she'd only taken 1 baby home. Only Noah. Only the son she'd held and fed and loved for 8 months without knowing half her heart was missing. Have you ever discovered someone you trusted was working against you? How did you handle that betrayal? Share your story. Where is he? Her voice cracked. Where's my other son? Logan's jaw tightened. With a family in Seattle who believes they saved him from an unwanted pregnancy. They've named him Ethan. They love him. And they have legal documents saying he's theirs. Legal documents based on lies. Legal documents that will hold up in court until we can prove their lies. The weight of it settled on her chest like concrete. Somewhere, another version of Noah was growing up with strangers, learning to walk in a different house, sleeping in a different crib, being loved by people who'd stolen him without knowing it. How do you know all this? Logan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried pain that money couldn't fix. Because I've been on the other side. Because I lost my son to a system that measures parents by bank accounts instead of hearts. Because I started investigating adoption fraud to understand how children disappear. And you found mine. I found yours. And I found out that the family who has your other son, they're not the only ones who were lied to. Before she could ask what he meant, Logan's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his face went white. What is it? He turned the phone toward her. A photo message from an unknown number. A little boy who looked exactly like Noah, playing in a mansion's backyard. The caption read, "Stop digging or you'll never see him again. Some ghosts from your past don't just haunt. They steal your future and sell it to the highest bidder." The photo on Logan's phone burned into Kayla's vision. Her son, her other son, playing alone in a stranger's yard. Healthy, happy, unaware that his entire existence was built on lies. We need to go to Nashville. Logan looked up from his phone. What's in Nashville? Melody Richardson, my former best friend. The person who helped me through my pregnancy and disappeared the day after Noah was born. The pieces clicked together like a lock turning. Melody, who'd insisted on driving her to doctor appointments. Melody, who'd filled out insurance paperwork when Kayla was too exhausted to think straight. Melody, who'd been so supportive, so helpful, so perfectly positioned to steal information. Tell me about her. Kayla's coffee had gone cold, but the memories burned hot. We grew up together in Oklahoma City. When I moved to Dallas pregnant and broke, she followed me. Said she wanted to help. Help how? Everything. Found me the apartment. Recommended the hospital. Even helped me pick Noah's name. The words tasted bitter now. She said she'd always wanted to be an aunt. Logan was typing notes on his phone. When did she move to Nashville? 3 days after Noah was born. Said she got a job offer she couldn't refuse. Some kind of consulting work. Kayla laughed without humor. I should have known consulting was code for something else. Did she have access to your medical records? She came to every appointment. The nurses knew her. They let her help with paperwork when I was too tired to focus. Logan's investigator had been thorough, but this was the missing link. The inside connection. The friend who'd earned trust to sell it to strangers. She knew you were having twins. She knew before I did. The memory surfaced like poison. At the 20-week ultrasound, the technician seemed confused. Keep checking measurements, making notes. Melody asked more questions than I did. Questions about what? Whether both babies were healthy. Whether there were any complications. Whether. Kayla paused, the truth hitting her like a cold wind. Whether I'd be able to handle 2 babies alone. The diner around them faded into background noise. Conversations about delivery schedules and highway construction couldn't compete with the sound of a life being reconstructed from lies. Logan pulled up his investigator's contact. I need a background check on Melody Richardson. Current address, employment history, financial records going back 3 years. While he made the call, Kayla stared at the photo of her stolen son. Ethan. The name felt foreign in her mouth, like a language she'd never learned to speak. How old is he in this picture? Recently. Maybe last week. Logan finished his call and focused on her again. My investigator has been monitoring the family for months. They're good people who think they saved a baby from poverty. They stole my baby from me. They bought what someone else stole. There's a difference. The distinction felt meaningless when her heart was breaking. But Logan was right. The family in Seattle were victims too. Just victims with better lawyers and cleaner consciences. What's the plan? We found Melody. We get her to admit what she did. We gather evidence that will hold up in court. And then we figure out how to reunite a family that never knew it was broken. Logan's phone rang. His investigator calling back with preliminary information. Kayla watched his face change as he listened. Surprise, then anger, then something that looked like fear. What is it? He hung up and met her eyes. Melody Richardson doesn't exist. What do you mean? I mean the name is fake. The social security number belongs to someone who died in 1987. The address in Nashville is a mail forwarding service. The floor seemed to drop away beneath her feet. Her best friend, the person who'd held her hand through pregnancy, who'd promised to always be there for her and Noah, was a ghost. A professional ghost who specialized in stealing children. How many other families do you think have been torn apart by people who see children as business opportunities? What should happen to people who steal babies? She played me from the beginning. She played everyone. The hospital staff who trusted her. The legal system that accepted her paperwork. The families who thought they were adopting legally. How many babies? Logan's silence was answer enough. This wasn't about one stolen child or one broken mother. This was about a business, a network, a system that treated children like inventory and mothers like obstacles to profit. We're going to Nashville anyway, Kayla said. Fake name or not, she left a trail. People remember faces even when they forget lies. It's dangerous if they know we're investigating. They already threatened my son. How much more dangerous can it get? Logan studied her across the table. In the harsh diner lighting, she looked younger than 27, but tougher than her circumstances should have allowed. The kind of strength that came from surviving things that should have broken her. There's something else. His voice was careful, like he was handling glass. The family that has Ethan. They're not just random people who want to adopt. What do you mean? The father is a tech executive. Someone I've done business with. Someone who knows my name and my reputation. The implication hung between them like smoke. This wasn't a coincidence. Someone had deliberately chosen a family connected to Logan. Someone who knew exactly who would investigate and how. They knew you'd find out. They wanted me to find out. The question is why. Before Kayla could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop looking or Noah disappears too. The message was accompanied by a photo of her apartment building. Recently, taken from the street. Someone was watching her home while she sat in this diner, trying to piece together a conspiracy that reached further than either of them had imagined. Logan saw her face. What is it? She showed him the text. His jaw clenched as he read the threat against the son she'd been allowed to keep. We need to get back to Dallas. Now, what about Nashville? Nashville can wait. Keeping Noah safe can't. As they stood to leave, Kayla felt the weight of choices that weren't really choices. Save one son by risking the other. Fight for truth while protecting what she had left. Trust a billionaire stranger because he was the only person who believed her story. The phone rang as they drove toward Nashville. Logan's investigator with news that made him pull over. There are 2 birth certificates, the voice said, and the other baby is still missing. In a Nashville hospital room, a billionaire and a single mom discovered that the greatest crime isn't stealing money. It's stealing motherhood itself. The drive to Nashville felt like traveling backward through time, each mile taking Kayla closer to answers she wasn't sure she wanted to hear. Logan had arranged for his security team to watch her apartment in Dallas, to keep Noah safe while they chased ghosts in Tennessee. St. Thomas Hospital stood like a fortress against the Nashville skyline. Glass and steel that reflected clouds while hiding secrets inside climate-controlled corridors. The same hospital where Melody had supposedly worked after leaving Dallas. Logan's investigator met them in the parking garage. Marcus Chun, 40-something with tired eyes and the kind of patience that came from years of uncovering ugly truths people prefer to keep buried. The records room is on the 3rd floor. Security cameras have blind spots near the service elevator. You'll have maybe 20 minutes before someone notices you don't belong there. Kayla's hand shook as she adjusted the visitor badge Marcus had acquired through methods she didn't want to understand. What if we don't find anything? Then we keep looking, Logan said. But we're going to find something. People this organized don't work without leaving traces. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and hope mixed with desperation. Familiar scents that took her back to Noah's birth, to the moment she'd become a mother without knowing she was becoming half a mother. The records room smelled of old paper and broken dreams, each file folder containing pieces of lives that had been torn apart and reassembled by strangers with clipboards and cash. They worked in silence, pulling files from the months surrounding Noah's birth, looking for patterns, unusual adoptions, babies born to single mothers who'd signed paperwork they didn't remember signing. Here, Logan's voice cut through the quiet. A file labeled Richardson, M., with dates that matched exactly. Melody Richardson had worked at St. Thomas for exactly 4 months. Started 2 weeks before Noah was born. Terminated for policy violations the day after his birth. Her employment application showed fake references, a fabricated nursing degree, forged credentials that wouldn't fool anyone who looked closely. But nobody had looked closely. Hospitals were busy places where competent help was welcome without too many questions. She wasn't just stealing information, Kayla realized. She was part of the system. Logan found more files. Other babies. Other mothers. A pattern of single women who'd given birth to healthy infants that somehow never made it home. Look at this. He spread documents across the floor like evidence at a crime scene. Birth certificates with altered information. Adoption papers signed by mothers who'd never seen them. Death certificates for babies who'd been very much alive. What would you do if you discovered you'd been robbed of part of your family? How would you fight a system designed to hide the truth? The scope was staggering. Dozens of babies over 3 years. Millions of dollars in illegal adoption fees. Families torn apart, while other families unknowingly built their happiness on stolen children. They had a system, Logan said. Target vulnerable mothers. Gain their trust. Alter records during birth. Separate twins or claim single babies died. Sell the children to wealthy families who thought they were saving unwanted babies. Kayla found a file that made her blood freeze. Her own name, with details about her pregnancy that no stranger should know. Financial information, work schedules, even psychological evaluations based on conversations with Melody. They profiled me. They profiled all of them. Single mothers without support systems. Women who worked multiple jobs and couldn't afford lawyers. Women who wouldn't be believed if they tried to fight back. The file contained photos of her apartment, her workplace, even pictures of her walking to work pregnant and exhausted. Someone had been watching her for months before Noah's birth, planning exactly how to steal half her family. At the bottom of her file, a note in Melody's handwriting. Excellent candidate. Twins confirmed. Recommend separation at birth. Mother unlikely to pursue legal action due to financial constraints. The words hit like physical blows. Melody hadn't been her friend. She'd been her hunter, circling and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Logan's phone buzzed. A message from his investigator in Seattle. Family with your son is asking questions. They found irregularities in adoption papers. What does that mean? It means they're starting to suspect something's wrong. And when wealthy people get suspicious, they hire investigators. Is that good or bad? Depends on whether they want to find the truth or hide from it. Logan pulled up another file. This one contained financial records. Money trails showing payments from adoptive families to lawyers to medical staff to document forgers. A business that generated millions while destroying lives. But there was something else. Something that made Logan's face go white as he read. What is it? He handed her a document. An invoice for consultation services addressed to Pierce Technologies. Logan's own company. Payment for $60,000, dated 6 months ago. Someone in my company hired them. The betrayal cut deeper than Melody's lies. Someone Logan trusted, someone with access to his resources and information, had been working with the people who'd stolen her son. Who? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. Footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Security guards making rounds, or worse, people who knew they were there and didn't want them to leave with evidence. Logan gathered the most important documents while Kayla stuffed files back where they'd found them. The truth was bigger and uglier than either had imagined, but they found the threads that could unravel the entire conspiracy. As they prepared to leave through the service exit, Logan's phone lit up with a live stream notification. A video feed showing a little boy who looked exactly like Noah, playing in a mansion's backyard while an off-screen voice said, "You have 24 hours to stop investigating or both boys disappear forever." But there was something in the background of the video that made Kayla's heart stop. A distinctive red brick wall she'd seen before, in photos from Logan's own business meetings. That's your company's building. Logan's face went deadly pale. Someone's been using my resources to steal children. And now they're using my property to threaten yours. They thought they were hunting one criminal until they discovered an entire network that treated babies like commodities and mothers like livestock. The video call came at 3 a.m. from Logan's head of security. Someone had accessed Pierce Technologies' private conference room after hours. Someone with executive-level clearance who knew exactly which cameras to avoid. Kayla sat in Logan's Seattle penthouse. Noah finally asleep in a portable crib Logan's assistant had purchased in the middle of the night. She'd refused to leave her son in Dallas after the live stream threat, and Logan hadn't argued. "Show me the footage." Marcus, Logan's investigator, pulled up security videos on his laptop. Grainy black and white images of a man entering the building at 11 p.m. using a key card that registered to someone Logan trusted completely. David Morrison, vice president of operations. Father of 2 adopted children himself. The man Logan had promoted 3 years ago after his own custody battle made headlines. He's been with the company for 5 years, Logan said, but his voice carried doubt now. Help me rebuild after the divorce. Helped you with what specifically? Kayla asked. Legal strategy, public relations, even recommended the law firm that handled my custody case. The same law firm whose letterhead appeared in the Nashville files. The same lawyers who'd processed illegal adoptions while appearing to handle legitimate business.
Logan's phone rang. David Morrison, calling from his home number at 3:17 a.m. Logan? Thank God you're awake. We have a problem. What kind of problem, David? Someone broke into the conference room tonight. Stole documents from the private files. I think they were looking for information about your personal legal matters. The lie came so smoothly, so convincingly, that Kayla almost believed it herself. David Morrison wasn't just stealing children. He was gaslighting the man whose resources made it possible. Which documents? I'm not sure. I only discovered the break-in an hour ago. Should I call the police? Logan met Kayla's eyes. She shook her head silently. Let him think his lies were working. No, handle it internally for now. We'll discuss it tomorrow. Of course. Logan, you know I'd never let anything happen to damage the company. Or your family. The word family hung in the air like poison after David disconnected. He's been watching you for years, Kayla realized, using your pain about losing your son to position himself as your ally, while stealing other people's sons to sell to the highest bidder. Logan pulled up David's employment file. Clean background check, excellent references, impressive resume. All probably as fake as Melody Richardson's nursing credentials. But there were details that suddenly seemed significant. David's children, adopted through private agencies. His ex-wife's mysterious death in a car accident 2 years ago, right after she'd started asking questions about their adoptions. How many people do you think are part of this? Logan was scrolling through company communications, looking for patterns. More than we thought. It's not just theft. It's systematic child trafficking disguised as legitimate business. They thought they were hunting one criminal, until they discovered an entire network that treated babies like commodities and mothers like livestock. Marcus found financial records showing payments from Pierce Technologies to various consulting firms over the past 3 years. 60,000 here, 90,000 there. Amounts large enough to matter, but small enough to hide in a company budget worth hundreds of millions. He's been financing the operation with your money and using my legal team to make it look legitimate. Kayla thought about all the mothers in the Nashville files. Women who trusted doctors and lawyers and social workers who seemed official and caring. Women who'd signed papers they didn't understand, who'd been told their babies were better off with more suitable families. We need to contact them. All of them. Let them know what really happened to their children. Some of them might not want to know, Logan said quietly. Some might have convinced themselves it was for the best. And some might want to fight. Logan's laptop chimed with an encrypted message from an anonymous sender. A video file labeled insurance policy. The video showed David Morrison in what looked like a warehouse, surrounded by filing cabinets and boxes labeled with dates and locations. He was speaking to someone off camera. The Pierce kid worked perfectly. Once Logan started investigating adoption fraud, he was emotionally invested. Made it easy to feed him information about other cases while steering him away from our real operations. The voice off camera was female. Familiar. What about the Dallas mother? She's becoming a problem. Too stubborn. Won't take money to disappear. Then we eliminate the problem. The woman stepped into frame. Melody Richardson, very much alive and very much in charge of an operation that reached far beyond Nashville or Seattle. How many children are currently in the system? 43 placed this year. 12 more ready for placement. The international clients are paying premium rates. International client. This wasn't just domestic adoption fraud. It was global child trafficking using Logan's company as cover. How far would you go to protect your child? What lines would you cross? Tell me in the comments where you would draw the line. The video ended with David checking his watch. Morrison needs to call Logan soon. Make sure he sounds concerned, but not panicked. We need another 6 months to move the offshore accounts. Logan's phone was already ringing. David Morrison, right on schedule. This time, Logan answered with the speaker on. David, Working late again? Unfortunately, yes. Logan, I've been thinking about the break-in. Maybe we should involve federal authorities. This could be corporate espionage. Good idea. I'll call the FBI in the morning. Silence on David's end. That wasn't the response he'd expected. Are you sure? FBI involvement could create publicity issues. I'm sure. Unless you think there's something we need to hide. Of course not. I'll support whatever decision you make. After hanging up, Logan turned to Kayla. He'll run tonight. As soon as he realizes I'm not playing along anymore. Where will he go? Same place they all go when billion-dollar crimes start unraveling. Somewhere without extradition treaties. Marcus was already tracking David's credit cards and bank accounts. Last transaction was an hour ago. Gas station near Seattle-Tacoma Airport. International flights? Checking now. Logan's secure phone rang. Unknown international number. Mr. Pierce? This is Agent Sarah Chun, FBI Human Trafficking Task Force. I believe you have information we need. The voice was professional, authoritative, and completely unexpected. Someone else had been investigating the same network, tracking the same crimes, following the same trail of stolen children and broken families. How did you get this number? The same way you got David Morrison's personnel files. We've been watching Pierce Technologies for 6 months, Mr. Pierce. We know about the adoption ring, the document fraud, the international trafficking. What we need is evidence that will hold up in court. Logan looked at Kayla, who was holding Noah protectively. One phone call could end this nightmare or make it infinitely worse. What kind of evidence? The kind that proves your son and 42 other children were stolen from their biological families and sold to adoptive parents who thought they were saving unwanted babies. Agent Shin paused before delivering the final blow. We also know that your business partner is planning to disappear tonight with enough money to fund trafficking operations in 12 countries. If you want to save those children and find your missing son, you need to help us stop him. When they came for Noah, they made one fatal mistake. They underestimated what a mother and a billionaire could accomplish together. The call came at 6 a.m. from Sunshine Daycare in Dallas. Kayla's neighbor had dropped Noah off early before her own work shift, following the routine they'd established months ago. Everything normal until it wasn't. Ms. Morgan. The voice was shaky, young. You need to come immediately. Kayla was instantly awake, Logan beside her already reaching for his phone. What happened? Someone tried to take Noah. A woman claiming to be from Child Protective Services. She had papers, official-looking documents saying there were concerns about his safety. Ice water flooded Kayla's veins. Is he okay? He's fine. Safe. But Ms. Morgan, she knew things. Personal things about your work schedule, your apartment, even your medical history. Logan was already on the phone with his security team, arranging immediate protection for the daycare center. Private jets could be useful for more than business meetings. Did you call the police? Kayla asked. Yes, but she was gone before they arrived. Left behind a briefcase with files about Noah. Financial records, photos, even what looked like custody evaluation reports. Custody evaluation reports for a child who'd never been in the system. Someone had been building a legal case to steal Noah while Kayla fought to find his twin brother. We're on our way, Logan said, ending his own call. My team is already en route to provide security. The flight to Dallas felt endless. Every minute, another opportunity for the network to disappear with evidence or hurt the people Kayla loved. Logan's plane cut through morning clouds while below, a conspiracy that reached across state lines prepared for war. Agent Shun called during the flight with updates that made the situation worse. David Morrison never made it to the airport. Credit card activity stopped at 11 p.m. last night. Either he's using cash or he's dead. Which do you think? In operations this big, loose ends get eliminated. Morrison knew too much and was becoming a liability. The implication was clear. If they'd kill their own partner to protect the business, they wouldn't hesitate to eliminate a single mother and her child. Sunshine Daycare looked like a crime scene when they arrived. Police cars, FBI vehicles, Logan's black SUVs creating a perimeter around a building designed for finger painting and nap time. The daycare center's cheerful finger paintings on the windows looked sinister now, each colorful handprint a reminder of innocence that predators sought to steal and sell. Mrs. Patterson, the daycare director, met them at the door with Noah in her arms. 8 months old and unaware that strangers had tried to steal him while he played with toys and trusted the adults around him. Kayla took her son with hands that shook from relief and rage in equal measure. Tell me everything. She arrived at 9 a.m. with official documents. Said there'd been reports of neglect, that Noah needed immediate protective placement. I asked to see her badge. Did she have one? Yes, but something felt wrong. She was too pushy, too urgent. Real CPS workers are more careful about protocol. Agent Chun appeared with a tablet showing security footage. A woman in a business suit approaching the daycare entrance with confidence that came from expecting to be believed. Do you recognize her? Chun asked Kayla. The face was older, harder, but unmistakably familiar. Melody Richardson. But she looks different. Plastic surgery, probably. People in this business change identities like most people change clothes. Logan studied the footage. She's not working alone. Watch the street. In the background, a van waited with tinted windows. Professional surveillance, coordinated timing, backup plans for every contingency. This wasn't desperation. It was strategy. How far would you go to protect your child? What lines would you cross? Tell me in the comments where you would draw the line. The paper she left behind, Agent Chun continued, they're sophisticated forgeries. Someone with access to real CPS databases created documents that would fool most people. But not you. We've been tracking this network for 2 years. Started with reports of adoption fraud in 6 states. Eventually traced it to an international trafficking operation worth over $50 million annually. $50 million. The number was staggering, representing hundreds of children stolen from families, sold to strangers, disappeared into lives they were never meant to live. How many children are we talking about? In the U.S.? At least 200 over the past 5 years. Internationally, the number could be over 1,000. Logan's security chief approached with an update that changed everything. We found Morrison. Where? Seattle Harbor. Apparent suicide, but the timeline doesn't work. Someone wanted us to think he killed himself. Another loose end eliminated. Another witness silenced. The network was cleaning house, preparing to disappear with their profits and leave behind nothing but broken families and unanswered questions. They know we're close, Kayla realized. That's why they came for Noah. Agent Chun nodded. Eliminating witnesses. Destroying evidence. Classic behavior when criminal organizations face exposure. But we have the Nashville files. The financial records from Pierce Technologies. The video evidence. All of which becomes worthless if the key witnesses disappear or die. Logan's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Stop the investigation or both boys disappear permanently. You have 6 hours. Attached was a photo that made Kayla's heart stop. Noah's twin brother, Ethan, no longer playing happily in a mansion's backyard. Instead, he sat in what looked like a cheap motel room, tears on his face, reaching toward the camera. They took him, she whispered. Took him from the adoptive family. Agent Chun was already making calls, coordinating with Seattle FBI to check on a Morrison family who'd legally adopted Ethan. The call back came within minutes. Family safe, but shaken. Men with guns broke into their home at dawn, demanded they surrender the child. They claimed there were legal issues with the adoption. At least they're alive, Logan said. For now. But whoever has Ethan now isn't interested in legal proceedings. They're interested in leverage. Kayla looked down at Noah in her arms, then at the photo of his twin brother crying alone in a stranger's room. 2 sons, both in danger. One she could protect, one she couldn't reach. What do they want? Agent Chin's next words confirmed their worst fears. They want you. Both of you. They know you have evidence that can destroy the entire network. They'll trade Ethan for your silence and your lives. Logan's secure phone rang with a call from a number that made him go white. His own home security system. Mr. Pierce? This is your housekeeper, Maria. There are men here. They say they need to speak with you about your son. They have a little boy with them who looks just like the photos in your office. The line went dead. Whoever was behind the network had brought the war to Logan's home, using an innocent child as bait to draw them into a trap that might be their last. Hidden away in a Colorado mountain cabin, two strangers became allies in a war they never chose, fighting for a family they were still learning to understand. Logan's safe house sat carved in a mountainside like a secret, accessible only by a private road that wound through pine forests and disappeared into wilderness. No cell towers, no internet, no way for the outside world to find them without invitation. They'd escaped Seattle in the middle of the night after FBI agents confirmed Logan's penthouse was compromised. Motion sensors showed multiple intruders, professional equipment, and signs that someone had been living there for days. Maria, the housekeeper, was safe but shaken. The men hadn't hurt her, just used her to send a message. Nowhere was secure, no one was safe, and Ethan was still missing. Snow fell softly outside the cabin windows, while Noah played with wooden toys by the fireplace, unaware that his laughter was healing two broken hearts that had forgotten how to hope. Kayla sat cross-legged on the floor, watching her son explore a world that felt temporarily safe. For the first time in days, he could play without bodyguards or FBI agents watching from corners. "He looks like you," Logan said, settling beside them with coffee that steamed in the mountain air. "He looks like his brother." The words came out harder than she'd intended. "Every time I see Noah, I think about Ethan, wondering if they have the same laugh, the same stubborn streak." "They do." Logan's voice was quiet. "I saw him once before I knew the truth. The family brought him to a company picnic. He wouldn't eat the birthday cake until he'd shared pieces with other kids." The image of her stolen son being generous with strangers while she'd never seen him smile cut deep. 8 months of firsts she'd never witnessed. First foods, first words, first steps taken in a house that wasn't home. "Tell me about your son. Your real son." Logan was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he spoke, his voice carried 3 years of grief. Marcus was 4 when his mother took him. Brilliant kid, asked questions that would make professors think twice. He loved building things, blocks, puzzles, elaborate cities made from couch cushions. "What happened?" "Victoria decided I was more committed to business than family. She wasn't wrong back then. I worked 18-hour days, traveled constantly, measured success in stock prices instead of bedtime stories. So she left. She filed for divorce and painted me as an absent father who couldn't be trusted with a child's emotional needs." The judge agreed. Kayla studied his face in the firelight. Expensive suit replaced by jeans and sweater, corporate armor abandoned for something more human. Were they right? Probably. I didn't know how to be a father back then. I thought providing for family meant making money, not making memories. And now, Logan watched Noah stack wooden blocks with fierce concentration. "Now I understand that love isn't something you buy or earn. It's something you choose every day in small moments that matter more than any business deal. Sometimes crisis brings people together in unexpected ways." Have you ever found love in the middle of chaos? Share your story below. The cabin felt like existing outside of time. No FBI updates, no threatening phone calls, no evidence files spread across tables like crime scene photos. Just 2 adults and a baby learning what family might look like if they survived long enough to find out. "What happens after we rescue Ethan?" Kayla asked. "We become a family. If you want that." "I don't know how to want that. I've spent so long just surviving, just protecting Noah. The idea of having more, of trusting someone else, scares you, terrifies me." Logan reached for her hand, fingers intertwining with natural ease that surprised them both. "Good. If it didn't scare you, it probably wouldn't be worth having." They talked through the night, while Noah slept between them on the couch. Conversations that revealed histories and hopes in equal measure. Logan's childhood poverty before tech billions. Kayla's dreams of college before pregnancy changed everything. By morning, they'd stopped being strangers thrown together by crisis and started being something unnamed but real. The secure phone shattered their peace at dawn. Agent Sean with updates that made the mountain hideaway feel less secure. "We found the motel where Ethan was held." Empty now, but they left evidence behind. DNA samples, fingerprints, surveillance footage showing at least 6 people involved in the operation. Any leads on where they took him? Working on it. But Kayla, there's something else. We've identified 12 other children currently missing from the network, all taken in the past 72 hours. 12 other children. 12 other families destroyed while she and Logan hid in mountain safety. The weight of it made breathing difficult. They're eliminating evidence, Logan realized. Getting rid of anything that connects to the trafficking operation. That's our assessment. Which means time is running out for all these children. Agent Shin paused before delivering worse news. There's been communication from the network. They want to meet. Where? Denver. Neutral territory. They're offering to trade all 13 children for the Nashville files, the Pierce Technologies financial records, and your testimony that you'll recant everything you've discovered. And if we refuse, the children disappear permanently. New identities, international placement, untraceable adoption networks that will scatter them across the globe. Kayla looked at Noah, sleeping peacefully in a world that suddenly felt more dangerous than ever. Save 13 children by agreeing to lie about crimes that had destroyed dozens of families. Protect her own son by abandoning his twin brother to strangers forever. What kind of meeting? Public place, daylight hours, FBI surveillance from a distance. They seem confident enough to risk exposure, which means they're planning something we haven't anticipated. Logan was studying maps on his tablet, calculating distances and timing. How long do we have to decide? They want an answer by noon. Meeting set for 3 p.m. if you agree. 3 hours to decide whether to walk into a trap that might save 13 children or destroy the only family Noah had left. Their peaceful evening shattered when Logan's phone showed a live stream. His biological son, Noah's twin, reaching toward the camera. A voice off-screen said, "You have 48 hours to stop investigating or both boys disappear forever." Some negotiations are about money, some about power. But when children's lives hang in the balance, everything becomes personal. The meeting location was Denver Union Station, a historic train terminal transformed into a bustling marketplace where thousands of travelers pass through daily. Public enough to discourage violence, busy enough to provide cover for anyone who needed to disappear quickly. Logan's security team had arrived hours early, positioned throughout the station with earpieces and concealed weapons. FBI agents posed as vendors and waiting passengers, creating layers of protection around a negotiation that could end with gunfire or handcuffs. Kayla carried Noah in a stroller, playing the role of tourist mother exploring the station's shops and restaurants. Anyone watching would see normal family activity, not the centerpiece of an international trafficking investigation. Remember, Agent Chin's voice came through their earpieces. We need them to admit their crimes on recording. Without confessions, even the evidence we have might not be enough to convict. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. To save children who'd been stolen, they needed criminals to incriminate themselves willingly. To rescue Ethan, they had to risk everything they'd fought to protect. Melody Richardson appeared at exactly 3 p.m., walking through the station's main entrance with confidence that came from holding 13 children as bargaining chips. She looked different again. New hair color, different makeup, clothes that suggested successful businesswoman rather than child trafficker. Behind her came 2 men in expensive suits who moved like security professionals. Corporate lawyers or hired muscle. Impossible to tell the difference in situations where both served similar purposes. Logan approached first, playing his role as concerned businessman who'd gotten in over his head. Melody, Mr. Pierce, thank you for being reasonable. Reasonable would be letting law enforcement handle this. Law enforcement doesn't understand the complexities of international adoption law. We do. The conversation was being recorded by multiple devices, but Melody was too smart to confess anything actionable. Her words suggested legitimate business practices, while her actions proved criminal intent. Kayla joined them, pushing Noah's stroller with hands that shook from adrenaline, disguised as maternal concern. Where's my son? Safe. Well cared for. Living with a family who can provide opportunities you never could. living with strangers who bought him from kidnappers. Melody's smile never wavered. Living with parents who went through proper legal channels to adopt a child from a mother who couldn't provide adequate care. The lies came so smoothly they almost sounded true. Proper legal channels involving forged documents. Adequate care measured by bank account balances instead of love. What do you want? Logan asked. Simple. You retract your allegations about adoption irregularities. You testify that your investigation found no evidence of criminal activity. You donate $5 million to our International Children's Advocacy Foundation. Children's Advocacy Foundation. The network had created legitimate-sounding organizations to launder money and provide cover for trafficking operations. In exchange for, your son returns home. The other 12 children return to their adoptive families. Everyone goes back to their lives, and nobody asks uncomfortable questions. Agent Chin's voice crackled in their earpieces. She's offering to return stolen children to the people who bought them. Get her to admit they were stolen. What about the families these children were stolen from? Kayla asked. Stolen is a strong word. These were voluntary private adoptions. Voluntary by who? By birth mothers who signed legal documents surrendering parental rights. Documents they never saw. For children they didn't know they were surrendering. Melody's composure cracked slightly. Ms. Morgan, you're emotional about this situation. That's understandable. But emotions don't change legal realities. Legal realities built on forged signatures and altered birth certificates. Documents that would never hold up in honest court proceedings, which was why the network preferred buying judges to facing juries. If criminals threatened your family, would you trust law enforcement or take matters into your own hands? What would you risk for your child? Logan pulled out his phone, showing surveillance footage from the Nashville hospital. Legal realities like stealing babies during birth and selling them to highest bidders? I don't know what that video shows, but it's certainly not evidence of criminal activity by our organization. Your organization doesn't exist legally. Shell companies and fake identities laundering money through international adoption networks. One of the men behind Melody stepped forward, hand moving toward his jacket. Logan's security team tensed, ready to turn Union Station into a battlefield if necessary. Gentlemen, Melody said smoothly, we're all civilized people here. No need for unpleasantness. She turned back to Logan and Kayla. You have until tomorrow morning to decide. Accept our offer and everyone goes home happy. Refuse, and those 13 children disappear into adoption networks that span 12 countries. What guarantee do we have that you'll honor the agreement? The same guarantee we've always provided our clients. Discretion, professionalism, and results that benefit everyone involved. Benefit everyone except the birth families who'd been lied to and robbed. Everyone except the children who'd been stolen from parents who loved them. Everyone except the adoptive families who'd unknowingly participated in trafficking operations. Melody reached into her purse, pulling out a tablet showing live stream video of 13 children in what looked like a nursery facility. All healthy, all under 3 years old, all playing with toys while unaware their entire futures hung in the balance. They're beautiful children. They deserve stable homes with parents who can provide for their needs. They deserve their real families. Their real families are the ones who chose to adopt them legally and love them unconditionally. The semantic games continued, each word carefully chosen to sound reasonable while defending kidnapping and human trafficking. Melody was too experienced to slip into admissions that could destroy her network. But she wasn't the only person who'd made mistakes. Logan's phone buzzed with a message from Agent Chun. David Morrison's body wasn't suicide. Autopsy shows he was murdered. And we found his phone. Morrison's phone contained communications with adoptive families, financial records, and most importantly, recordings of conversations where the network had been less careful about legal language. MS. Richardson, Logan said, I think you should know that David Morrison kept very detailed records of his business activities. For the first time, real fear flickered across Melody's face. David was always thorough enough to record conversations with clients who wanted to know the real story about their adopted children's backgrounds. I'm sure any recordings would show proper legal procedures, including the conversation where you told the Seattle family that Ethan's birth mother was a drug addict who died of an overdose. The lie was specific enough to be provable, dramatic enough to justify emergency adoption procedures, and completely fabricated to prevent the adoptive family from asking questions. Melody's composure finally cracked. That information was provided to help the family understand their child's medical history. Provided by who? The birth mother, who was supposedly dead, but was actually in Dallas working 2 jobs to support the son she didn't know she'd lost. The admission hung in the air like gun smoke. Melody had just confessed to providing false information about Kayla to an adoptive family, confirming that the adoption involved deception at minimum. Agent Chin's voice came through clearly. That's enough for fraud charges. Move to arrest positions. But as FBI agents began closing in, Melody smiled with the confidence of someone who still held all the important cards. Mr. Pierce, Ms. Morgan, I hope you'll reconsider our offer. Because if you choose to proceed with legal action, I can guarantee that none of those 13 children will ever see their families again. Her phone buzzed with an incoming call. She answered the speaker, knowing everyone could hear. Status report, her voice commanded. Children are loaded and ready for international transport, awaiting final authorization. 13 children are about to disappear forever unless Logan and Kayla choose to let criminals walk free. Justice for some or salvation for others, but not both. As they approached the mansion outside, Denver looked like something from a fairy tale. But fairy tales don't have security cameras and armed guard protecting stolen children in designer nurseries. The phone call ended with Melody's final ultimatum. You have 1 hour to decide. Save 13 children by walking away, or watch them disappear while you chase justice that will never bring them home. As FBI agents surrounded the group, Melody's backup plan became clear. The children weren't in Denver. They were already en route to private airfields, charter flights, and international destinations where American law enforcement had no jurisdiction. Where are they? Agent Chin demanded, stepping out of her vendor disguise with badge and weapon drawn. Somewhere safe, Melody replied. Somewhere you'll never find them without my cooperation. Logan looked at Kayla, both understanding the impossible choice they faced. Save the children they could see or pursue justice for crimes that had destroyed dozens of families. But Kayla had spent 8 months learning what mothers would do for their children, and she learned that sometimes the right choice looked like surrender. We'll take the deal, she said quietly. Kayla, no, Logan started. We'll take the deal with one modification. You return all 13 children to their biological families, not their adoptive ones. You provide documentation proving which families they were stolen from, and you surrender yourself to prosecution. Melody laughed. That's not a deal, Ms. Morgan. That's a fantasy. It's the only deal that saves those children and prevents this from happening to other families. You're in no position to negotiate. Agent Chin's earpiece crackled with urgent communication from her team. We've located the transport vehicles. Interstate 25 southbound, 3 vans with federal plates. Federal plates. Someone in the government was providing cover for the trafficking operation, explaining how they'd maintained operations for years without prosecution. Which agency? Logan asked. That's classified, Chin replied, but her expression suggested the corruption reached higher than local law enforcement. Melody's confidence wavered as FBI vehicles surrounded Union Station and backup units pursued the vans carrying 13 stolen children toward Mexico. You can't prove anything, she said, but the words lacked conviction. We can prove you lied about Ethan's background to his adoptive family. We can prove you falsified medical records in Nashville. We can prove your organization received payments from Pierce Technologies under false pretenses. Logan stepped closer. And we can prove you murdered David Morrison to prevent him from exposing the network. The accusation hit like a physical blow. Melody's careful composure finally shattered completely. David was a liability. He got sentimental about the children, started asking questions about placing limits on international sales. That kind of thinking destroys billion-dollar operations. The confession was clear, recorded, and admissible in court. Murder motivated by protecting child trafficking profits, spoken by someone who'd forgotten that motherhood makes people fight harder than money ever could. Agent Chun was already calling for backup as Melody's security team reached for weapons. Union Station was about to become a battlefield with thousands of innocent travelers caught in crossfire. But Logan's security team had anticipated this moment. Professional protection specialists who'd spent careers keeping billionaires safe knew how to end threats quickly and quietly. The confrontation lasted less than 30 seconds. Melody Richardson, architect of a trafficking network worth $50 million, found herself face down on Union Station's marble floor with federal agents reading her rights while tourists stepped around them like street performances they hadn't paid to see. "The children?" Kayla asked. Agent Chin's radio crackled with updates from pursuing units. Van stopped at the checkpoint. "All 13 children are safe and in federal custody. Medical teams en route. 13 children safe. 13 families are about to be reunited. And somewhere in federal custody, Noah's twin brother was finally coming home." As federal agents led Melody away in handcuffs, she turned back with words that made Kayla's blood freeze. "You think this ends with me? This network spans 6 countries and generates hundreds of millions annually. I'm middle management, not leadership. The people who really run this operation will never see the inside of courtrooms or prison cells." Logan grabbed Kayla's hand as the implications sank in. They'd won this battle, saved these children, exposed this particular network. But somewhere, other Melodies were targeting other vulnerable mothers, stealing other babies, destroying other families. The war against child trafficking was bigger than any single case or arrest. It would require resources, commitment, and the kind of systematic change that came from turning tragedy into purpose. As they walked through Union Station toward federal vehicles that would take them to reunite with Ethan, Logan's phone rang with a call that changed everything one more time. "Mr. Pierce? This is Maria Gonzalez with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. We've been monitoring international adoption networks for 2 years, and we need your help identifying victims. How would you feel about turning your investigation into a foundation that helps other families find their stolen children?" Kayla looked at Logan, both understanding that their story was ending where other families' stories would begin, with hope, resources, and proof that love could triumph over systems designed to destroy it. In the distance, sirens announced the arrival of medical teams who would examine 13 children and begin the long process of healing trauma that shouldn't have existed. And in federal custody, Ethan was finally safe, finally coming home to a family that had fought across state lines and risked everything to find him. The nightmare was over. The real work was just beginning. Breaking into a fortress is hard enough, but breaking out with 2 babies while criminals shoot at you requires the kind of love that stops at nothing. The federal facility outside Denver looked like a cross between hospital and prison, designed to process rescued children while protecting them from traffickers who might attempt recovery operations. Bulletproof glass, armed guards, and medical teams trained in trauma care created barriers between stolen children and the people who'd sold them. Ethan sat in a sterile playroom surrounded by toys he didn't recognize, reaching for social workers he'd never met. 8 months old and identical to Noah in every way except the fear in his eyes. He'd learned to be afraid of strangers, to cry when new people approached, to expect abandonment disguised as care. Kayla's heart shattered, watching her son flinch away from her touch. He didn't know her voice, her scent, her love. To Ethan, she was another stranger in an endless parade of people who'd moved him from place to place like cargo. "It's normal," Dr. Sarah Martinez explained, her voice gentle but clinical. "Children who've been trafficked often develop attachment disorders. Trust becomes dangerous when adults consistently lie or disappear. How long until he knows me? Every child is different. Some reconnect with birth parents immediately. Others need weeks or months to feel safe enough to bond." Logan knelt beside Ethan's chair, not trying to touch, just existing in the same space. "Hey, buddy, I know I'm a stranger, but I've been looking for you for a long time." Ethan studied Logan with curiosity that looked exactly like Noah when he encountered something new. Same tilted head, same serious expression, same intelligence processing information behind identical brown eyes. The adoptive family wants to visit, Agent Chin said quietly. The Morrisons. Not David, but his ex-wife Sarah and their other adopted children. They've cared for Ethan for months. In their minds, he's their son. Another layer of complexity in a situation already broken beyond easy repair. Sarah Morrison had raised Ethan believing she was saving an unwanted baby from poverty. Her love was real, even if the adoption was criminal. What do they know? That they were deceived? That Ethan was stolen, not surrendered? That their adoption fees funded a trafficking network? Chin paused. Sarah Morrison is devastated. She wants to do what's best for Ethan, even if it means giving him up. The mansion's marble floors echoed with running footsteps as alarms wailed, but all Kayla could hear was her heartbeat thundering as she ran toward the nursery, where two pieces of her soul waited. Actually, that was the wrong building. They weren't breaking into mansions. They were sitting in federal facilities, navigating custody battles fought with lawyers instead of weapons. But the emotional stakes felt equally dangerous. Can we all visit together? Kayla asked. Sarah Morrison and us? Let Ethan see that everyone wants what's best for him. Dr. Martinez looked surprised. Most biological parents don't want contact with the people who unknowingly benefited from trafficking. Most biological parents haven't spent 8 months learning that love isn't about ownership. It's about putting children's needs first. Logan squeezed her hand. We do this as a team. All of us who love him. Sarah Morrison arrived looking like someone who discovered her entire life was built on lies. Mid-30s, designer clothes that couldn't hide exhaustion, eyes red from crying over children she'd raised but never legally owned. Behind her came 2 other children, both adopted through the same network, both now understood to be trafficking victims rather than legitimate placements. I'm sorry, were Sarah's first words to Kayla. I didn't know. We thought we were saving children who needed homes. You were. You did save him. You kept him safe until we could find him. The word surprised everyone, including Kayla herself. But watching Ethan's face light up when he saw Sarah made the truth undeniable. He'd been loved, even if he'd been stolen first. What happens now? Sarah asked. Agent Chun had documents prepared for multiple scenarios. Legally, Ethan belongs with his biological family. But we can arrange supervised visits, gradual transitions, whatever helps him adjust. And the other children? Jessica and Marcus will be returned to their biological families as well. DNA tests confirmed matches with parents who never stopped looking. 2 more families are about to be reunited. 2 more children learned that the people who'd raised them weren't their only sources of love. But logistics couldn't solve the emotional complexity of loving children who'd been stolen from other people who loved them first. What does it mean to be a parent, biology or love? When you see someone risk everything for a child, does it matter whose DNA they share? Dr. Martinez suggested a gradual introduction process. Noah and Ethan in the same room, supervised by people who understood their history. Twin brothers meeting for the first time since criminals had separated them at birth. The moment was captured by federal cameras for evidence, but everyone present knew they were witnessing something more important than legal proceedings. They were watching a family heal from trauma designed to keep them broken forever. Noah crawled toward his brother with determination that suggested some connections transcend memory. Ethan watched him approach with curiosity instead of fear, recognizing something familiar in features that matched his own. When they touched hands through the playroom gate, both boys laughed with identical sounds that made every adult in the room cry. They know, Sarah Morrison whispered. Somehow, they know they belong together. Logan was documenting everything on his phone, not for legal purposes, but for family memories they'd almost lost forever. We're going to make sure they never have to be apart again. Agent Chin received a call that changed the atmosphere in the room. Her face went serious as she listened to information nobody else could hear. What is it? Logan asked. Melody Richardson is talking, giving us names, locations, financial records. She wants a plea deal in exchange for exposing the entire network. That's good news, right? It's complicated news. The network reaches into federal agencies, state court systems, and international adoption authorities. People with power to make evidence disappear and witnesses die in custody. The implication was clear. Even in federal protection, even with recorded confessions and documented evidence, they weren't safe until the entire organization was dismantled. How long? Kayla asked. Months, maybe years. This is the largest child trafficking bust in U.S. history. Processing evidence, identifying victims, locating families will take time we don't have if the network decides to eliminate witnesses. Logan looked at his sons, both of them now, regardless of genetics or legal documents, playing together like they'd never been apart. Then we disappear until it's safe. All of us. Sarah, the kids, everyone who can identify network operations. Witness protection, better. Private protection with resources the government can't match. Logan's billions were good for more than business deals and political donations. They could buy safety, security, and time for families to heal while justice works slowly through systems designed to protect criminals with connections. As they prepared to leave the federal facility, Ethan reached for Kayla with trust that felt like forgiveness. Not just for the months they'd been apart, but for the lifetime of healing that lay ahead. In the nursery, two identical babies reached for them through their cribs, but in the chaos and darkness, Kayla couldn't tell which one was Noah. Logan whispered urgently, "We take them both. We figure it out later." Behind them, footsteps pounded up the stairs. Wait, that was the wrong scene again. In reality, they walked out together through federal facility doors into Colorado sunshine, carrying sons who were finally safe to be brothers. Saving the children was only the beginning. Now, they had to prove two babies belonged to a single mom and a billionaire who were still strangers to the law. The Denver courthouse buzzed with media attention that Logan's legal team couldn't suppress. Child trafficking cases involving billionaires and federal corruption made headlines that court orders couldn't silence. Kayla sat at the plaintiff's table wearing her best dress, the one she bought for job interviews before Noah was born. Beside her, Logan's attorneys spread documents across surfaces designed for smaller cases with simpler truths. Judge Patricia Hawkins had presided over family court for 20 years, but nothing had prepared her for custody proceedings involving international trafficking networks and stolen twins. This court must determine legal parentage, custody arrangements, and visitation rights for two minor children whose births were manipulated by criminal organizations, Judge Hawkins announced. "We will proceed with evidence, not emotion." But emotion filled every corner of the courtroom. Sarah Morrison sat with her legal team, fighting for children she'd raised but never legally owned. Kayla held Noah while Logan documented everything, knowing that Ethan's future depended on legal arguments that couldn't capture the complexity of love built on lies. DNA evidence was straightforward. Kayla was the biological mother of both boys. Logan had no genetic connection to either child, but his resources had made their rescue possible. What is the plaintiff seeking in terms of custody? Judge Hawkins asked. Logan's lead attorney stood. Mr. Pierce seeks joint custody and adoption rights for both minors, with primary residence determined by the best interests of the children. And the biological mother's position? Kayla's court-appointed lawyer looked nervous, representing someone whose case had attracted more attention than his entire previous career. Ms. Morgan supports joint custody arrangements that prioritize family unity and the children's emotional welfare. Sarah Morrison's attorney presented a different argument. Your Honor, my client has been the primary caregiver for Ethan Morrison for 8 months. She's provided stability, medical care, and emotional support during his most formative developmental period. The legal language couldn't disguise the heartbreak. Sarah Morrison was fighting for a son who'd been stolen from his biological mother and given to her through lies. Mrs. Morrison, Judge Hawkins addressed Sarah directly. You understand that the adoption proceedings were based on fraudulent documents? Yes, Your Honor. But my love for Ethan wasn't fraudulent. My commitment to his well-being wasn't criminal. I've been his mother in every way except biology. The statement hung in the courtroom like truth that complicated justice. Sarah Morrison was both victim and beneficiary of trafficking operations, deserving sympathy, but not custody. How do you think the legal system should handle cases where children are stolen and sold? What justice would you want to see? Agent Shin testified about the trafficking network's operations, presenting evidence that painted Sarah Morrison as an unwilling participant rather than a criminal conspirator. Mrs. Morrison paid $200,000 for what she believed was a legal private adoption. The paperwork provided by the network was sophisticated enough to fool adoption agencies and family court judges. But the adoption was never legal. No, Your Honor. Ethan was stolen from his biological mother at birth and sold through forged documents that created fictional consent and surrender papers. Dr. Martinez testified about the psychological impacts of separating twins at birth, explaining attachment patterns and developmental needs that legal systems rarely considered. Both boys have been traumatized by separation and multiple caregivers. Their identical genetics create biological bonds that transcend memory or early experiences. In your professional opinion, what arrangement serves their best interests? Keeping them together with their biological family, while maintaining contact with Mrs. Morrison to preserve beneficial attachments formed during Ethan's placement with her family. The recommendation made legal sense, but emotional chaos. How do you share children between people who love them for different reasons? Logan's financial records became evidence when Sarah Morrison's attorney suggested his wealth created unfair advantages in custody proceedings. Mr. Pierce can provide educational opportunities, medical care, and material advantages that a single mother working multiple jobs cannot match. Logan stood to address the court directly. Your Honor, I grew up poor. I understand that love isn't measured in bank balances. My resources are available to support both boys regardless of legal custody arrangements. You're offering financial support without custody rights? I'm offering whatever these children need to thrive. If that means supporting Ms. Morgan as a single mother, so be it. If it means shared custody arrangements, I'm prepared for that responsibility. Judge Hawkins studied the unusual case that defied normal family court categories. Mr. Pierce, what is your relationship to the biological mother? The question everyone had avoided asking directly. Logan and Kayla looked at each other across the courtroom, connection visible even to strangers observing from gallery seats. We're partners, Your Honor, in investigating this case, in rescuing these children, and in building whatever family structure serves their needs. Partners in what sense? In every sense that matters. The courthouse steps buzzed with reporters and camera crews, but inside the family courtroom, only truth mattered. 2 children who needed parents, and 2 adults learning what family really means. Judge Hawkins called a recess to review evidence and consider arrangements that had no legal precedent. Custody battles involving trafficking victims, biological parents, and unknowing adoptive families required creative solutions that existing law couldn't provide. During the break, Sarah Morrison approached Kayla with words that changed everything. I want you to know that Ethan is loved. Whatever happens legally, he's been cherished every day since he came home with me. Thank you for taking care of him. Thank you for creating him. Sarah's voice broke. He has your stubbornness and your beautiful eyes. The conversation between 2 mothers who loved the same stolen child became the foundation for arrangements that courts couldn't mandate, but hearts could accept. When proceedings resumed, Judge Hawkins announced a decision that satisfied no one completely, but served the children's needs. This court awards primary custody to the biological parents, Logan Pierce and Kayla Morgan, with supervised visitation rights for Sarah Morrison and her family. The boys will remain together, with gradual transition periods that respect their attachment to all caring adults. Legal victory that felt like compromise. But watching Noah and Ethan play together on the courthouse floor, surrounded by people who love them, made the complicated arrangements feel like something resembling justice. Agent Chin approached after the hearing with final updates about the trafficking network. Melody Richardson's testimony helped us identify over 300 stolen children across 12 states. Your case broke open investigations that will reunite dozens of families. 300 children, dozens of families. The scope of crimes that had started with one wrong number phone call and led to international trafficking prosecutions. As they walked down courthouse steps in a Denver sunshine, Logan's phone rang with a call that represented new beginnings rather than crisis. Mr. Pierce? This is Dr. Angela Rodriguez with the National Center for Missing Children. We'd like to discuss establishing a foundation that uses your resources to help other families find trafficked children. Kayla shifted Ethan in her arms while Logan held Noah, both boys content to be carried by people who'd fought to bring them home. The judge's decision would determine their family's future. Would the twins stay together with their biological parents, or would years of illegal separation be legally recognized? The gavel fell as everyone held their breath. Actually, the gavel had already fallen. The decision was made. The boys were coming home together to a family that had started with questions and found answers in love that chose to grow rather than break under pressure. 2 babies, 2 broken adults, and one impossible situation became the foundation for a family that nobody expected but everyone deserved. The Denver house Logan purchased wasn't a mansion. It was a home, with 2 cribs side by side and a kitchen table big enough for the family they were still learning to become. 6 months after the courthouse decision, routines had replaced chaos. Morning feedings where twin boys grabbed for the same spoon. Afternoon naps that synchronized perfectly despite months of separation. Evening baths that turned into water fights between brothers who made identical, mischievous faces. Kayla had quit her jobs at the diner and cleaning company, not because Logan's money made working unnecessary, but because raising trafficked children required full-time attention that minimum wage employers couldn't accommodate. "They're starting to talk," she announced over breakfast, watching Noah and Ethan babble at each other in language only twins understood. "What are they saying?" "Probably planning trouble. Look at those faces." Logan studied his sons, both legally his now, through adoption papers that felt more meaningful than any business contract he'd ever signed. 9 months old and already showing personalities that suggested future challenges for anyone trying to control them. "Sarah's visit went well yesterday," he said carefully. These conversations still felt fragile, discussions about sharing children with someone who'd unknowingly benefited from their theft. She brought photo albums, pictures of Ethan's first months that I'll never have. The pain was still there, probably always would be. Milestones missed, memories stolen, first experiences witnessed by strangers who'd loved him without knowing his real story. But Sarah Morrison had become an unexpected ally rather than an obstacle. Monthly visits where Ethan could maintain connection with the woman who'd raised him, while learning to trust the parents who'd never stopped looking. "The foundation paperwork is ready for your signature," Logan said, sliding documents across their kitchen table. "The Kayla and Noah Foundation for Missing Children. Resources dedicated to helping other families navigate trafficking investigations, legal battles, and reunion processes that government agencies couldn't handle alone." "Are you sure about the name?" "I'm sure about the mission. Your name on the foundation tells other mothers they're not alone." $50 million in startup funding, with Logan's business network providing ongoing support. Money that could hire private investigators, fund legal battles, and pressure law enforcement agencies that might otherwise ignore cases involving poor families. The foundation's first case had come from Agent Chun, a family in Texas whose newborn had disappeared from a hospital, with staff claiming the baby had died despite no death certificate or burial records. "Sounds familiar," Kayla had said when Chun explained the situation. "Sounds like the same network operating under different names." 3 weeks of investigation had reunited that family with their deceased daughter, who'd been living with adoptive parents in California who'd paid for what they believed was a legal adoption. "How many more families are out there?" Logan asked. "Hundreds, maybe thousands." The network Melody exposed was one of 12 operating in the U.S. alone. The scope was overwhelming, but so was the potential for justice. Every reunited family, every exposed network, every trafficking ring dismantled meant other children wouldn't be stolen from parents who loved them. What makes a family? Shared DNA, shared love, or shared experiences? How do you define what family means to you? The doorbell rang during lunch, interrupting thoughts about global trafficking networks with immediate domestic concerns. Agent Chin stood on their porch with expressions that suggested official business rather than social visits. We need to talk. Logan invited her inside, where Noah and Ethan continued eating with focus that suggested they'd learned to ignore adult conversations that didn't directly involve food or toys. Melody Richardson was murdered in federal custody 2 nights ago. The words hit like cold water. Melody had been cooperating with authorities, providing testimony that was dismantling trafficking networks across multiple states. Ow! Someone with access to federal detention facilities. Someone who could arrange for security camera malfunctions and guard schedule changes. The corruption goes higher than we thought. Much higher. Melody's death means we're losing our primary witness against network leadership. Kayla felt familiar fear returning. If federal custody couldn't protect key witnesses, how safe were the families trying to rebuild from trafficking trauma? Are we in danger? Everyone connected to this investigation is potentially at risk, but killing victims would create more publicity than the network wants. What about Sarah Morrison and her children? Also under protection. The people behind these operations prefer to eliminate witnesses, not create martyrs. Logan was already making phone calls to his security team, arranging enhanced protection for a house that had started to feel like sanctuary. There's something else, Chun continued. We've identified the leadership structure. People with connections to federal adoption agencies, state court systems, and international placement organizations. Anyone we know? 2 federal judges who've been approving questionable adoptions for years. A State Department official who facilitates international placements. And someone from your business network, Logan. The revelation wasn't surprising, but still felt like betrayal. Logan's wealth had attracted people who wanted to exploit his resources for criminal purposes. Who? Victoria Pierce, your ex-wife. The name hit like physical violence. Victoria, who'd taken Logan's biological son in their divorce, had been participating in trafficking networks that stole other people's children. That's impossible. Marcus, your son with Victoria, wasn't adopted through legitimate channels. He was purchased through the same network that stole Ethan. The implications were staggering. Logan's ex-wife had bought their son from trafficking networks, then used custody battles to prevent Logan from discovering the truth. Where is he now? We don't know. Victoria disappeared with Marcus 3 days ago, right after Melody started providing testimony about high-profile clients. Logan's phone was already ringing with calls from his legal team, private investigators, and security professionals. The trafficking case had become personal in ways that made Ethan and Noah's rescue feel like the beginning rather than the end of their family's crisis. We'll find him, Kayla said, understanding that Logan's pain mirrored her own months of not knowing where her children were. What if we don't? Then we keep looking. That's what families do. Agent Chun was gathering her files, preparing to leave them with protection arrangements and investigation updates that couldn't bring immediate comfort. There's one more thing. We've identified 12 other children who were trafficked through Victoria's network, all taken from single mothers, all placed with wealthy families who paid premium rates for babies with clean backgrounds. 12 more families destroyed. 12 more children growing up with stolen identities. 12 more cases for the foundation that was supposed to help heal trafficking trauma rather than investigate new crimes. As Chun left, Logan stood at the kitchen window, watching Noah and Ethan play in their backyard. Safe for now, loved completely, but part of a story that was expanding rather than concluding. The foundation office overlooked a playground where Noah and Ethan chased each other in endless circles, their laughter floating through windows that framed a future none of them could have imagined when a stranger's voice first asked, "Is this baby really yours?" But that was the future. Right now, they were still building the foundation of a family that had started with crisis and was learning to grow through love. Some weddings celebrate love, that's easy. This one celebrated love that was earned through fire, tested by crisis, and proven by sacrifice. The small church in Dallas, where Kayla grew up, looked different now. Not shabby, but sacred, filled with people who understood that some love stories require courage as much as chemistry. 18 months after that first midnight phone call, Kayla Morgan was becoming Kayla Pierce in a ceremony that felt more like celebration of survival than traditional romance. Noah and Ethan, now walking and babbling in stereo, serve as ring bearers with coordination that suggested they'd planned the chaos. Matching tiny suits that they'd somehow managed to get grass stains on during the 15-minute car ride from the hotel. Did you ever imagine this? Kayla asked Logan as they stood in the church vestibule, listening to guests find seats among pews that had witnessed her childhood prayers for a different kind of life. A year and a half ago, I was a bitter billionaire who'd lost his son and his faith in justice. Now I'm marrying a woman who taught me that family isn't about genetics or money. It's about choosing each other every day. Agent Chin sat in the front row, off-duty but never really off guard. The trafficking investigation had led to 47 arrests across 12 states, but network leadership had scattered like roaches when lights came on. Victoria Pierce and Logan's biological son Marcus remained missing, despite private investigators and federal resources dedicated to finding them. Some days, Logan looked at Noah and Ethan and wondered if he'd ever meet the child who shared his DNA, but not his daily life. Sarah Morrison sat with her remaining adopted children, now confirmed as trafficking victims who were gradually being reunited with their biological families. Complex custody arrangements that required more lawyers than most weddings needed flowers. She looks happy, Logan observed, watching Sarah help Ethan straighten his tiny bow tie. She's learning what I learned. Love isn't about possession. It's about wanting what's best for the people you care about. The church pianist began the wedding march, but instead of traditional ceremony music, she played a lullaby that both boys recognized from bedtime routines. Noah and Ethan started down the aisle hand in hand, dropping rose petals and stopping to wave at people they recognized. Kayla followed, wearing a simple dress that cost more than her first apartment's deposit, but felt right for a woman who'd learned to accept help without sacrificing dignity. Logan waited at the altar in a suit that probably cost more than most people's cars, but his attention wasn't on clothing or ceremony. His eyes fixed on the woman walking toward him, carrying proof that love could heal damage that seemed permanent. What moment in this story touched your heart the most? What would you want to say to parents who've had their children stolen from them? Pastor Williams had known Kayla since she was 12 and skeptical of adults who made promises they didn't keep. He'd watched her struggle through poverty, pregnancy, and crisis that would have broken people with less determination. We're gathered today to celebrate a family that was built through adversity, strengthened by crisis, and proven by sacrifice. He began. Not everyone's love story starts with crisis calls and federal investigations, but this one did. The congregation laughed because trauma shared with people who understood became something lighter than pain. Logan and Kayla, your vows? They'd written them separately, but the words echoed themes of protection, partnership, and choosing each other despite circumstances that gave them every reason to walk away. Kayla, you taught me that strength isn't about having power over situations. It's about refusing to let situations have power over you. Logan, you showed me that accepting help isn't weakness when it's offered by someone who sees your worth before you believe in it yourself. The rings they exchanged have been designed with Noah and Ethan's birthstones, symbols that family was about choice as much as chance. By the power vested in me by the state of Texas and the grace of God, I now pronounce you husband and wife, parents to two beautiful boys, and proof that some families are worth fighting for. The kiss sealed more than marriage vows. It marked the end of a crisis that had brought them together and the beginning of a life built on foundations stronger than romance or convenience. The reception was held at the community center where Kayla had volunteered before Noah was born, back when she thought her future meant working multiple jobs until exhaustion replaced ambition. Now the same building hosted a celebration funded by Logan's resources, but rooted in relationships Kayla had built through years of showing up for people who needed help. Speech, someone called as Logan stood with champagne that cost more per bottle than most wedding receptions spent on food. A year and a half ago, Kayla answered a phone call that changed our lives. She could have hung up when a stranger asked questions about her son. She could have refused to meet me, could have handled the crisis alone like she'd handled everything else. Logan found Kayla's eyes across the room, where she sat with Noah and Ethan on her lap, both boys trying to grab Kay from her plate. Instead, she chose to trust someone she had no reason to trust. She chose to fight for justice instead of accepting injustice. She chose to build a family with someone who'd forgotten how to hope. The applause came from people who'd watched Kayla survive circumstances that destroyed others, who'd seen her refuse charity while accepting partnership, who understood that her strength had made Logan's healing possible. To families that are chosen, children who are fought for, and love that grows stronger under pressure. The toast was interrupted by Agent Chun approaching with her phone, expression suggesting business rather than celebration. "We found them," she said quietly. "Victoria and Marcus, and 12 other children who've been missing for months." Logan's champagne glass hit the floor as he processed news that changed everything again. His biological son was safe, found, coming home to a father who'd never stopped looking. Where? Private compound in Mexico. International trafficking hub that we've been tracking for 6 months. Kayla was already standing, Noah and Ethan in her arms, understanding that their wedding day was about to become a rescue mission. "What do you need from us?" "Testimony, evidence, and patience while we process 13 children who've been traumatized by separation from their families." Logan looked at his new wife, their sons, and a room full of people celebrating love that had survived trafficking investigations and federal prosecutions. "We'll do whatever helps bring those children home." As they left their own wedding reception to help coordinate another family reunion, Noah reached for Ethan's hand with the instinctive understanding that some bonds transcend memory, separation, or circumstances designed to keep people apart. The community center emptied as wedding guests became volunteers in a rescue operation that would reunite 13 families and close the final chapter on a trafficking network that had destroyed hundreds of lives. As they slipped the rings onto their fingers, a thought struck them both with such clarity it took their breath away. This wasn't just about them anymore. There was something they needed to tell him, something that would change everything again. Wait, that was the wrong ending line from the outline. At their actual wedding, as they slipped rings onto their fingers, Kayla whispered something that made Logan's eyes fill with tears. "We're going to need a bigger house. I'm pregnant." The news that would complete their family came on the day they'd chosen to make it official, surrounded by people who understood that some blessings are worth fighting for. 3 years after a wrong number call changed everything. A family that started with questions found all their answers in love, justice, and the simple truth that some miracles are worth fighting for. The foundation office overlooked a playground where Noah and Ethan chased each other in endless circles, their laughter floating through windows that framed a future none of them could have imagined when a stranger's voice first asked, "Is this baby really yours?" Kayla Pierce. The name still felt new after 2 years of marriage. Watched her 3-year-old sons through glass that protected them from a world that had tried to tear their family apart before it fully formed. "Mama, watch." Noah called from the top of the slide, waiting for attention before launching himself down with reckless confidence that came from knowing someone would catch him if he fell. Ethan followed immediately after, competitive spirit ensuring he'd never be far behind his twin brother in anything from playground adventures to bedtime negotiations. Behind her desk, case files spread like evidence of ongoing war against systems that treated children like commodities. The Kayla and Noah Foundation had facilitated 127 family reunions in 3 years. But each success story reminded her how many families remained broken by trafficking networks that operated faster than justice could stop them. "The Martinez family reunion is scheduled for tomorrow," Logan said, entering the office with coffee and updates from their legal team. DNA confirmed their daughter was sold through the same network that took the boys. Another family about to experience the joy and trauma of finding a child they'd been told was dead. Another little girl who'd grown up believing strangers were her parents, learning that love was more complicated than the fairy tale suggested. How's she adjusting? Better than expected. Turns out she never stopped asking questions about her background. Some children know instinctively that their official story doesn't match their inner truth. Logan settled beside Kayla at the window, watching their sons negotiate playground politics with other children whose families have been rebuilt through foundation resources. Remember when our biggest problem was figuring out which baby was which in that nursery? Now our biggest problem is explaining to Marcus why he has 3 younger siblings and his mother is in federal prison. Victoria Pierce had been sentenced to 30 years for human trafficking, but her son Marcus struggled with loyalty to the woman who'd raised him and horror at discovering how he'd been acquired. At 6 years old, Marcus Pierce lived with Logan and Kayla, legally adopted but emotionally complicated. Some days he played happily with Noah and Ethan, delighting in having brothers who shared his interests in building elaborate structures and asking endless questions. Other days, he asked why his first mommy had done bad things, why his daddy had money when other families didn't, why some children got stolen while others got saved. Questions that required answers about justice, privilege, and moral complexity that most kindergartners shouldn't need to understand. He's in therapy session with Dr. Martinez right now, Logan continued. She thinks he's making progress processing the trauma of learning his entire origin story was fabricated. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Logan's quest to understand adoption fraud had reunited him with a biological son who'd been trafficked just like Kayla's twins. For boys now, Marcus, Noah, Ethan, and baby James, who'd been born 13 months ago during a snowstorm that knocked out power at Denver General Hospital. James Pierce had been conceived naturally, born without crisis, welcomed into a family that understood the difference between children who were fought for and children who were simply loved from the beginning. He's walking, Kayla announced, watching 18-month-old James toddle across the playground grass with determination that suggested he'd inherited his brother's stubborn streak. Already? Wasn't he just learning to crawl? Time moves differently when you're not running from criminals or testifying in federal court. What would you do if you discovered your family was bigger than you knew? How would you use your second chance to make the world better? Share your thoughts on what family really means. The foundation's success had attracted national attention that Logan's public relations team struggled to manage. Congressional hearings about adoption fraud, documentary filmmakers wanting to tell their story, book publishers offering advances for memoir rights that could fund foundation operations for decades. But media attention also attracted criticism from people who believed wealthy families shouldn't interfere in child welfare systems, even when those systems enabled trafficking networks that sold children to the highest bidders. The 60 Minutes interview is next week, Logan reminded her. Are you ready to tell the story again? I'm ready to help other families find their children. If that means answering the same questions about midnight phone calls and federal investigations, so be it. 3 years of retelling their story had transformed crisis into purpose, trauma into advocacy, personal pain into public policy that protected vulnerable families. The Kayla and Noah Foundation had lobbied for federal legislation requiring DNA testing in all adoption proceedings, criminal background checks for adoption facilitators, and international cooperation agreements that prevented traffickers from moving stolen children across borders. Actual policy changes that would prevent other families from experiencing separation trauma, though enforcement remained inconsistent in states where corruption protected profitable criminal networks. Agent Chun called with updates about the international investigation. Logan said carefully, knowing that news about global trafficking operations still triggered anxiety about family safety. Good news or bad news? Mixed news. They've dismantled trafficking networks in 12 countries, but leadership has moved operations to locations where law enforcement cooperation is less reliable. The war against child trafficking was like fighting infection that adapted faster than medicine could develop treatments. Every network dismantled led to new organizations that learned from predecessor mistakes. But every family reunited, every child found, every trafficking ring exposed made the fight worthwhile. James toddled over to his mother with grass stains on his clothes and dirt smudges on his face that suggested he'd been exploring playground terrain with typical Pierce family curiosity. Up, he demanded, arms raised in universal toddler language for requiring immediate parental attention. Kayla lifted her youngest son, marveling at how different his infancy had been from his brother's. No crisis, no federal investigations, no custody.